Welcome to Rad Chat. I'm your host, Brandilynn, and today we have another awesome Zoom. But before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Shop Gold Look, who has amazing merchandise. She has a new collection that's an adventure collection. So all of you, all those people who like hiking or going on the outdoors or whichever, you need this merch. So go hit them up. And then today, my special guest is Jeff Crespi, or you might know him as Jeff Crespi Rocks, who I've known for years, and we'll get into the story. But welcome, Jeff. Thank you for coming, or virtually coming.
Thank you. It's great to see you virtually.
Likewise. I know
It's been a long time.
How funny. So I guess we can just start with how we know each other and then lead into what you do, which is a photographer. So we've probably known each other like over 10 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
I can't recall the exact concert, but basically I was a little emo girl and I'd go to all these concerts, Starland Ballroom concerts, Warped Tours, Bamboozles, the whole shebang, because originally I'm from New Jersey, which is where you currently are. And I would go all the time, and then I would go so much, and I was this crazy kid that crowd surfed, I was in the mosh pits, that I started to get to know the security guards because they would catch me like 10 times in like an hour. And I just remember you and your son Ian would always be by the security guards. And I don't know how, but I guess one concert we finally like talked, or you would take photos of the crowds, and I would see on Facebook from like the security guards Facebook that you had like photos of me crowd surfing. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I think it just kind of molded from there. And now, like, fast forward, we've been to so many same concerts. You take so many photos of me. So I think that is my basic story of how we met. I don't know the exact concert, though.
See, I was trying to think of it, too, and I can't remember. But I think the vision I have is following around sexy heroes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So, we used to follow them around wherever they went, whether it be Starland or a local VFW or a firehouse or wherever they played, we ended up being there. And you were always with your friend who I believe does the yoga now.
Yeah, Melissa. Yeah.
Melissa, that's right.
Me, Melissa, sometimes Shay, and in the beginning, sometimes our friend Paul. We found out about Sexy Heroes from like a VFW, because we used to follow Pat and Penny and be friends with Pat and Penny. And then one time they did a show together and we're like, oh my God, these bands are awesome. So we had started following Sexy Heroes to support them. We had that whole costume, and then that's funny. That could have been the first introduction.
Yeah, that was kind of my vision of always, running into you. And I remember you'd say, oh, they're playing here, they're playing there. And, me and Ian would kind of run over there wherever they were and meet up with you guys. Yeah, and it was just cool. I mean, they were one of the first local bands that I kind of really followed around the circuit. There was another band called The Clear Blur. Okay. Which were friends of mine from Edison, New Jersey.
Oh, nice.
And so they were another one of those local bands that me and Ian would just follow all around the circuit. So there was a few bands that outside of Starland Ballroom that we would just go wherever they played in the state.
Yeah, I agree. I think also that's why we probably all got so much along, because I miss this so much about New Jersey and the concert music scene, is that people maybe other states too, I can only really speak for Jersey, but like if we really liked a band, we all supported those bands and like, helped them out. And that's when like Facebook was, even bigger than Instagram, what it is now. But I just remember, we'd go to every show they had, no matter if it was Jersey, we'd go to Pennsylvania a lot.
Well, you would even mention Patent Pending. So like they headlined a show they used to do here in Marlboro, New Jersey, close to me. At the Marlboro Rec Center. And they used to put on these cool shows that went on all day and night with like 3 stages in all different rooms, and Patent Pending and Sexy Heroes and the Omatics and all these cool bands that we would just go, the Stolen, which actually
there was even that little band Rapid Fire.
Kevin Smart was the drummer, who's now the drummer for Jake Miller.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So he was a 15-year-old kid when we were hanging out and watching him and me taking pictures, and now he's on tour, all over the world with Jake Miller.
Isn't that so crazy? I feel like you're right. Like, okay, so also for people that just think concerts of these like big production concerts, like big stars, like concerts to us are also local show concerts, and like the local music scene, especially if you come from a town or a city or a state that really supports that local scene. And we did come from a state that really supported like rock and roll and, you know, hardcore, not any type of genre, but like you would find them all at these VFW halls, and they would do these big events.
Well, I remember because, you know, Ian was 12, 13-ish. And so a lot of these kids were still in middle school and high school in these bands. They couldn't go anywhere else because they didn't even drive. So they could only play their local VFWs or their local firehouses or their friends' basements. So that was the scene. That was, you know, somebody's backyard, a garage. It was all of that, you know, and I was fortunate enough that I was also going to Starland at the time. So I had the best of both worlds. I had the mainstream bands, and then I had all the local bands on the off nights, you know, the VFW show. So I was part of both scenes. And then a lot of those kids would show up at Starland to see their favorite bands. So I got the pleasure of being in both places.
Yeah, and I completely agree too. And I think the same. Like Melissa and Shay, my friends, were always older than me, so they were driving when I wasn't. And I was like, let me come to any concert you're going to, or I would go to a lot of concerts with my mom, who was super cool.
Well, I remember one of the shows you came to with us at Starland, you had just gotten your license. Yeah. And I didn't want you driving home late at night, so you stayed here at the house with me and Ian.
Yeah, I remember that was, I want to say it was As I Lay Dying. And it was the first Starland concert that was happening once I got my license. Yeah. And I was like, I just got my license. I have to go to any show. I don't care what it is. It just happened to be a cool rock, like a hardcore band show. And you're right. I remember I stayed at your guys' house, which is also another testament to how genuine concert, or I call them like my show friends, because I met them at shows, are, because we just became like family. Like I just felt like you guys were such friends to me, and like took care of me. Your wife made us food when we got home.
I think for me it was more about, like, it wasn't just about the music, it was about the scene as a whole. And I wanted to make sure that that was what everybody understood of why I was doing what I was doing and going to all these shows. You know, photography was just a piece of the puzzle to document me and Ian's journey. Photography had nothing to do with it at the beginning. Like, I never envisioned being a professional music photographer. That was never a plan. It was never something I set out to do. I just love to have documentation of my life. So, you know, years down the line, you have something to look at and remember those things.
Yeah, and that's so incredible too, because I was the same way with my mom, which now kind of brings me to like, let's kind of talk. How did you get to where you are now? Like, obviously your son was probably around like my age when I started going to shows, and you probably, you know, you were like, I feel like my relationship with my mom was like your relationship with your son, Ian. So let's kind of start from the very beginning. How did you start going to concerts with Ian to then how did you become?
So I was obviously always a music fan,
published photographer.
I was always a music fan all my life. Music always played a role in whatever phase I was going through growing up. But I was not a big concert guy. I was not the guy that went to like arena shows or even cared about who was playing where. I was more of a club guy. I worked in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn. I worked in New York City from the time I was 19 years old. So I did the whole club scene in New York City back in the early 80s when New York City was New York City. Right. And, you know, would go to clubs and watch Madonna, and go to clubs and watch, you know, whoever was playing that night. We had L'Amour's in Brooklyn for the rock side, and go watch bands like Twisted Sister and Zebra and all those, you know, hair metal bands and death metal bands. And so I always went for the purpose of the social engagement. I never followed a band. I never went after a band in a way that, you know, oh my God, this band's playing here, this band's playing there, I have to go see them. That was not what my life was about. It was just about hanging out with friends, meeting people, and just doing whatever. And that was it. And then, you know, when I met my wife, and, you know, things just happened, you know, I got married, you know, my wife and I traveled for about 10 years before we had Ian. And
Ooh, that's awesome.
and that was it. And then you just went to work, came home, and did what you had to do. I never went to shows. I moved to New Jersey 23 years ago,
Oh,
and
wow.
we had one of the biggest clubs that I used to pass all the time coming home from work called Birch Hill,
Okay.
which is the club before Starland Ballroom.
Oh, okay.
That was
Insider. I
where
didn't
a
know
lot of
that.
those bands played first. But I never went there. It was not my scene. But when Ian was about 8 years old, um, he started to dabble in my CDs in the house.
Mm.
And he found one of my Kiss CDs.
Oh, how
And he was this
funny.
little kid with the big headphones, just listening to Kiss and singing aloud in the house.
If you have a photo,
And
you should send it to us.
I don't even think he knows. He didn't even know anything about the makeup at that time. He just found
Yeah, he's
music.
too young.
And I remember like, oh, maybe I should just go out and buy Kiss DVDs and show him concerts, and which I did. And Kiss just happened to be playing PNC Bank Arts Center that
Oh,
summer.
which is
Again,
another amazing venue.
I have not been to a concert at that point in over 25 years.
Wow. That's
So
crazy to think about.
the whole experience of just saying maybe I should take Ian to a show was more scary for me than it was for him. And I remember I said, I'll just get lawn seats and we'll see how it is. Man, he's an 8-year-old kid. I wasn't going to spend $300 to take him to a concert and not know how he was going to like it. So we sat on the lawn and we had a good time. So I said, okay, maybe this could be, that father-son bonding thing, going to concert.
Yeah.
So I think the following month, Motley Crue played there. And I took to see Motley Crue. And again, we had a great time. So his first two shows was Kiss and Motley Crue. At the time, my wife was working for a very large music company.
Oh, wow.
Affiliated with Warner Music.
Oh,
so
dope.
all these labels, Rhino, Side One Dummy, Epitaph, there was like 150 labels that she had connections to.
Oh,
and
no.
I remember her coming home and she says, there's this club in Sayreville. I think I could get you on some guest lists.
Oh.
So I remember going to the club, Starland Ballroom, with a friend just to check it out. There was a show. I went. I said, let's go check it out. And I said, this could be a good place to take my son. It was an all-ages venue. I think there was only 2 shows a year that were 18 and over. And they were mostly those Battle of the Band shows just to get the drinking crowd in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'd give my wife a list of all the shows, and she would go to work and she would look them up and see who the record labels were. And depending on the record label, she would say, okay, this one, and this one, I could get you on the guest list.
That's so crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we started going there. But remember, as a fan, you're showing up, got a little kid, so you got to show up very early to get online to make sure you're in the venue close up to the front. So we were getting to the venue probably an hour and a half before doors, and waiting on the line. And then remember, then you go in the venue and you still wait another hour before the first band comes on. Yeah. So between that hour and a half outside and the hour inside, you're talking to everybody who's around you. And when you got a little kid, they all want to talk to you. Everybody wants to talk to the kid. Everybody wants to know what shows you go to, what bands you like. So that was really of those probably the first year of us going to Starland, was the interaction with the people on the lines. And Ian at that time would dress up. He would color his hair. He'd have mohawks. He'd wear like my chem jackets. He would paint his nails. And so it became this really, and then every show somebody would say, oh, if you like this show, there's a show next week you should come to. This band is great. That band is great. So between the guest list that my wife was getting us on, and then I'd be, okay, I'll buy a ticket to this show. I'll buy a ticket to that show. Well, within a few months, we were going, at least once or twice a week. Yeah. And that led to everything.
And before you keep going, just so if people don't know, because I don't know, we're so used to Jersey, and California is a little different when I've been to concerts out here. But you're right. You're waiting in line for hours because Starland Ballroom is one of the most known venues for like, you know, rock bands, pop punk, metal, whatever the case is, any type, all types of bands. And if you want to get by that like front gate, like front row, you have to get there so early because people are so dedicated to their bands in New Jersey or whoever they want to listen to. They will wait all freaking day. And with winters, they're still waiting. So you're right. It was funny to bring up because you have to get there so
and I remember early. I would have to barricade him in against the right dead center of the rail, and I would barricade him in. And I would never let my hands off that rail for hours. And bodies would just be flying over my head, and I would just duck in. And the security guards, you know, they all knew us, and they were like, they would always come over. Do you need any water? Do you need anything? So they were really cool with us. They made us feel at home. They were very nice, and so it made it a very comfortable place for me to bring in, even at that age. But yes, you know, we were the fans. We played the game. We did everything that a fan would normally do. Get there early, hang out after the show and hope they come out to sign things. You know, buy the T-shirts, buy the CDs. We did all of that. We did that for the first, almost 6 years. I think the second year I found out that they sold a season pass. Now, at that time, a season pass was for the entire year. It was literally like a credit card with my picture on it, and access to every show that Starland Ballroom had, including a guest, which was my son. So for me and my son, we were now able to go to every single show they had, which they normally had somewhere about, I think it was somewhere about 100 shows a year at that time, approximately.
I'm so jealous. I always wanted that season pass, but I never could get it. But I remember dreamed of it.
Every December, I would literally walk up to the box office, and I would hand them at that time, at the beginning, it was like $1,500 for the entire year. And I would hand them $1,500, and they would give me my pass. And that was it. Cool. That's how. So I never had to buy tickets. I never had to, worry about star parking. I never had to worry about anything. It was just all done. So yeah, it was great. We did that for almost 7 years straight. By the time it was all kind of, by that 6th or 7th year, between Starland Ballroom, between VFW shows, between whatever, I think we were going to over 250 shows a year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So when I first met you, you were already standing by the security guards. So how did you transition from like going to the concerts with Ian and like protecting him in the front row to then transitioning to you guys to the side?
So, well, he got older and I got older. So as he got older, I was able to, not have to worry as much.
Yeah.
But also I was getting older and I was like, man, I don't want to do this shit anymore. I don't want to be in the middle anymore. I want to go pee if I got to pee. I want to go, so that kind of corner became my spot because it was a good visual of him. And also knowing the security guards, they felt comfortable with me there too because they knew me, had somebody to talk to, and they also used me like I helped. Like I would keep an eye on that corner. I would make sure nobody runs in. I would point out a crowd surfer if a security guard didn't see them coming on that end. If they needed something, I would kind of call it over to Pete in the corner. The barricade needs water or barricade needs towels. And I would text Pete in the corner. And, so we kind of had that relationship. So that corner became my spot, which was both a cool thing, but also a curse because that was my spot. Ian's friends, as he got older, all his friends would come up to me at the beginning of the show and just throw me everything, their wallets, their phones, their jackets. And
I would probably have done that too.
I would have everybody's phone and wallets and cigarette packs in my pockets and sweatshirts and coats under the barricade step. And it just became like overwhelming. Like people would just come and racing through the crowd just to want to get up there and be over there with me. They just thought it was easy access, and they had access to being that close. There were actually times where I got called into the office by the general manager
Oh,
and
really?
said, I can't have you there anymore. You can't stand there anymore because you're disrupting the show. Like people are just literally pushing people out of the way to get up there.
Wow. See, that's
Yeah.
pretty funny. Like, I just remember, like, for sure when, like, we started, like, I started knowing you, Ian, and becoming close. Plus, also, I knew the security guards, too. That I just remember, like, okay, we got to come to the concert. We'll go right to the corner. We'll go say hi to Jeff. We'll go say hi to Craig or Troy or Dink, whoever was the security guard that night. Minnie for a while, like whoever the security guard was, you're like, okay, I gotta say hi to them, tell them hello. I'll see them at the beginning of the show. I'll see them at the end of the show. Maybe it's not, like if it's Taking Back Sunday sold out, you ain't seen anybody after that. But I remember I would always go to that corner just to say hello to everyone, because you're right, like it became more like a family because
100%.
You're knowing these people, then you have them on Facebook, and then they're following your journey. Then I could connect to how Ian probably felt like growing up in that environment, and you probably seen him grow up in that environment, because then I feel like I grew up with these people and they saw me grow up. So I felt like I was always feeling like so cool to know you and know the security guards, and like a bond. I always knew like, okay, I'm gonna be taken care of. And then I always knew, because I was a crazy crowd surfer, anytime I'd come down, I knew to go on your side, because you would like push me right back in the crowd. You're like, get out of here. But it's funny, I do remember also giving like sometimes on my that's when I used to use the little digital camera, and I'd be like, can you hold my camera please?
Well, that's all at that time. That's all I had was a little Fuji point, which they still make fun of me for because it was kind of orange. So they still always say, oh, you still have that orange camera that you started with?
That's
and it was just a regular point and shoot camera. And funny thing is with pictures, I guess everybody used to come up to me, and especially the security guards, and they used to say, how come all your pictures are on a slant? And I had to explain to them that the reason is because being in that corner, I had to hold the camera on a slant so I didn't get all their bald heads in the picture. Because every security guard had a bald head.
Pretty much had a bald head.
So that was the reason. Everybody thought it was a cool style of mine, but the real reason was to avoid the bald heads.
You heard it here first.
So it's kind of all those little things just kind of played into the whole, it's not just a show, it's kind of a fun atmosphere. It's kind of more about the scene and the people than just the music. And I think that was what I like to be told as the story behind what made it all possible for me. So I think when you kind of look back, done from a photography standpoint, I think that my journey from fan to photographer also was about, the acceptance of the fans, the acceptance of, I had the fans behind me. They were roaring for me. They were so happy when they saw me for that first time in the photo pit, doing it professionally. It was a big deal. And it was a big deal to me too. And, I'm an older dude. So it's like, I'd be going home and telling my wife and my kids, they're like, you're an idiot, Dad. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is really cool. Like, like I got to shoot this part, I got to shoot that part, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, they were like, so to them, it was just funny. But to me, it was a big deal.
I think that's super big deal, because I knew you, it's just the point and shoot digital camera, and you would focus a lot, actually in the beginning you focus a lot on the crowd and the guards, and then of course the bands too. But I remember, like, going to what you said, like having fan support. I think you probably got that so naturally because you supported us. Like every kid, especially us emo kids, wanted photos of us doing cool things. Like when I saw myself crowd surfing, I look all disheveled, but it's the coolest photo. And I live, like, you've given me memories of things that I've done over the years. And without you taking those fan photos of like in the mosh pit, getting picked up by the guards. The kid that would always
crowd surf in the Pooh Bear, he reached out to me recently because he was making a documentary, and he wanted me to write a story about him because I've taken pictures of him at like every show. So it's like, these are like, I don't know these people personally, but the fact that they followed my journey all these years and still know that I'm out there doing what I'm doing is so amazing.
It
Like
is
when
so
people come up to
amazing.
me at shows and say, I know you don't know me, but you took pictures of my kid in a band when he was like 16 years old. And I just want to
Aw.
thank you for everything you do. You know, that to me means everything.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, like if I ever made a documentary of my crazy concert days, you would have to be the one that documents it because you really gave me these memories. Because I mean, how would I really have these photos? Because there's some concerts you have the craziest. I'm I'm just in all these positions, and you've gotten the craziest ones where like it's made newspapers or it's
Yeah.
made like NewJersey.com at Warped Tours, and you've also helped document my process at Warped Tours of all my outfits I would
Yeah.
do, and we had our own little funny photo where you pick me up every year.
Well, one
So
thing that I've always loved too, especially, you know, you, because I love things that are obviously very colorful and very bright. So not only were you a nice kid, but from a photography standpoint, everything was there. It was a perfect setting. Like you were always the one that was jumping up in the crowd. You were always the one that was dressed in colorful outfits,
crazy
and
outfits.
your passion was just so amazing. And when I see that from behind a camera, there's nothing better than seeing through a lens the passion on somebody's face, whether it be them singing to their favorite band, whether it be, you know, crowd surfing, trying to get to their favorite band, but you can see the passion on somebody's face when they're doing that. So as a photographer, that's what I always look for. So yeah, absolutely. I always love taking pictures of the crowd. I would just scan the crowd for people that were just, you just see tears coming down their eyes because they're, oh my God, I'm literally standing here in front of, you know, whatever band it might be, and where it was their dream to see that band live or be in the middle of a crowd like that, especially at like Warped Tour or Bamboozle or something
Yeah.
like that, you
And
know?
I just want to like give you like I'm so proud to know you and to see your journey too, because I feel like I was there from almost the beginning.
Yeah.
And I have to also thank you so much because you helped document my journey. So from going from taking pictures of the crowd, how did that transition then to like, oh, like I enjoy taking pictures of the crowd? And then what was your transitions from each step?
So basically, a couple of the photographers that were at Starland Ballroom shooting professionally at the time, they kept egging me on. They kept saying, why don't you do this professionally? You're here every show anyway. You might as well. It's a lot of fun. And I remember saying, you know, it's not really what I set out to do. I enjoy coming with my son, having fun. It's not really what I planned on doing. But anyway, I remember somebody saying, you know, just email some bands and see if they'll give you a photo pass. Emailed a bunch of bands and not a single one responded. I didn't get one single answer. And I remember coming across on Facebook some publication Facebook page. I didn't know who they were at the time, but I remember writing an email to this woman, and I just wrote, you know, this is what I do with my son. I go to all these shows. We have the greatest time, and maybe I could write reviews for your site.
Oh,
And this woman wrote me back, and she said, I love what you do with your son. She says, how about I put you down as a staff photographer and help you get some press passes? And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah.
crazy.
I said, okay, what do I do? She says, don't do anything. She says, just, you know, send me whatever shows you want to shoot, and I'll put in the request. So I remember going home and telling my wife, I said, I have to go get a camera. She says, what do you mean you have to get a
Yeah,
camera? I
you
said,
just had
well,
your little one.
I'm going to be shooting these shows and I have to get a professional camera. Well, how much is a professional? I don't know. I don't know. And I remember like, you know, messaging some people saying, what should I get? I don't, you know, and, you know, I got some recommendations. I went to Best Buy, and the camera I got at the time was the Canon T3. That was the, I guess, middle of the road camera at the time. And it was like $599.
It's a big
And I remember,
investment.
and then I had to buy a lens, which I got one for like 120, whatever it was. So it was like $700 or $800 to start. And
Yeah.
my wife's like, well, are you going to get paid for this? And I go, no. Like, No, just like for fun. Like, but the magazine turned out to be Amp Magazine, which
Oh,
at the time was one of the biggest magazines out there
yeah.
that covered pretty much everything. And so from day one, I was shooting every single show that came through Starland Ballroom. All I had to do was send in a list of the schedule, and they would just write me back, confirmed, confirmed, confirmed,
That's
confirmed.
awesome.
So I think I shot about 80 shows in the first 100 days. And they were also letting me, the local shows I was doing, like at VFWs,
Mm-hmm.
they were letting me send them like online photo galleries.
Oh,
So they
wow.
were now taking these young bands, remember, middle school, high school, these
Yeah.
kids were now in like magazines.
Oh my
They were
God.
now
See,
like on
that's
magazine
really
websites.
cool. That's
All these
cool.
local bands like Batten Down the Hatches, Touchdown Boy, all these cool bands that me and Ian hung out with in the early years were now getting their pictures put up on these, Amp Magazine Facebook pages, which at that time had like whatever they had, like 30, 40,000 followers,
Yeah.
And so it was a big deal for them as well.
That's a super big deal. And that kind of just goes back to your roots of how you started. Like you were there for the fans because you knew what it was like to be the fan. And then you're giving back to the community that like gave back to you. So you have this cycle of your roots really being ingrained in then your journey.
Yeah. So it's really a cool thing. And then, so Starland Ballroom became Starland Ballroom was technically the only club I ever walked into in New Jersey, outside of, the little places like the VFWs.
Mm-hmm.
PNC, I was technically only out like a couple of times, but I never went to any other club in New Jersey other than Starland Ballroom. So that was my home. That was literally my home. And so for those first 7 years, and then when I started shooting professionally, Starland Ballroom was everything.
Mm-hmm.
It meant the world to me. They kind of supported my journey as well, because remember, when you got somebody coming to your club every night and saying all those cool things and doing all those cool things and taking pictures and promoting, remember, it's promotion for them too.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, it made sense, So here I am now shooting all these shows professionally, and, Amp Magazine, and then a couple of years later, Amp Magazine went under. It redeveloped as a new magazine, but they had a different way of doing things. So now it was like, who do I shoot for now? So I found a couple of local publications here in Jersey, was shooting for them for a while. So now I was shooting everything. And Asbury Park wasn't even in the picture yet. Like Asbury Park came in the picture only a little after Hurricane Sandy.
I was going to say,
Starland Ballroom went down for a year to renovate.
Had a rough patch.
Yeah, so I kind of, what do I do now? And I remember somebody saying, why don't you come out to Asbury? They got a cool music scene. And I think it was the Saint was the first club I went to in New Jersey. And I remember walking in, and this young couple came up to me. They go, aren't you the guy that owns Starland Ballroom? I swear. And I'm like, why would you think I own Starland Ballroom? And they go, well, because you're at every single show. You're always in that corner with a black shirt. You know everybody. We just thought you owned the place.
Oh my God, that's
no,
so
I just
funny.
go there with my son to have a great time. And we've been doing that for like 7 years. And the cool thing is that when Starland went down, all of those people had to go somewhere else too. So where do you think they all went? Asbury Park was the closest area for music. So all of those fans transferred to Asbury Park for that year as well. So every club in Asbury Park, I was now walking into, and they go, oh my God, there's that guy from Starland Ballroom. And it just became like everybody knew me already.
That's cool. Well, and also just
so crazy.
That's super crazy. And just so in case people, because who knows where people are watching this. So Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey bad, like destroyed us. So Starland Ballroom got affected. Asbury Park did get affected, but it was more like the more of the boardwalk part.
Yeah, nothing really closed.
But it also, people don't know, Asbury Park has such rooted musical history with like Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi, so much good musical acts. And so the Stone Pony is a huge, huge, huge venue. And the Wonder Bar is also like another big venue down there that's just musically renowned. So you're right. If you don't have Starland at the moment, where do you naturally go? You're right. You're going to go to Asbury. And that's so funny. Like, everyone knows you everywhere.
Yeah, so everywhere I went. And then the next thing I know, venue owners and venue managers were coming up to me and going, you know, bands are asking if you're going to be here.
Oh,
and
wow, that's crazy.
Wow. I mean, like, you know, and it became like this weird but cool thing. Like, you know, are you going to be here? And then that's kind of when everybody started reaching out to me. Like, bands started emailing me, messaging me, hey, Jeff, we're playing, you know, the Stone Pony on Friday. Are you going to be there? We're playing the Saint on Thursday. Could you come by and shoot our set? We're playing the Brighton Bar, or, you know, that's when all of that started to happen. So, you know, now that I was established as more of a professional photographer, a lot of the bands now started requesting me to be at their show.
That's
and I now
so
now
awesome.
I'm like sitting there like a secretary. Now I'm like making lists of all these shows at every venue, you know, in the towns, in the states, and, you know, figuring out where I'm going to be, what show I want to be at. And it was crazy. Like, the bands would be reaching out to me, and then it started where, okay, I could hit you at 8 o'clock. I could hit you at 9 o'clock. I could get to you at 10 o'clock. And now I was going to 3-4 places in one night, you know? So it was just, yeah, it just became, it just kept going and getting bigger and bigger, to the point where, you know, 80% of my time was given to just going to these shows and taking pictures. But I was also getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to my day job every day. You know, so people didn't know that. Like, when people would say, you know, when they found out that I actually worked during the day, they were like, what? You have a job and do this also? Like, I'm like, yeah, what do you think I do during the day? You know, we just thought that, you know, everybody thought I made like millions of dollars taking pictures. That was my career. Like, that was my living, you know.
That's
and
so
I had to
funny.
explain to them that it wasn't that way.
Yeah. That's funny too you say that, because I guess it's just a natural assumption, like, oh, they're just like the concert person, that's their job. But I do remember the time that I did stay over your guys' house. I feel like maybe twice, because I feel like I also stayed over when we did Skate and Surf, and that time at Ray. Yeah. And I remember you used to do the work, like, you used to be a trainer. And I remember one day, that next day, we went to this full concert, full workout, and then the next day we go to the gym and you train me at the gym. So kind of just to bring that up, and before, you know, we go any further into the music photography, but you did have a day job and you had multiple other jobs. So do you want to talk about the couple other things you did before you went?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically photography, you know, the concert scene for me all evolved while I was working at a gym. I worked as a personal trainer for 13 years at a gym fairly close to my house. So the scheduling part of being a trainer, you basically make your own schedule, so to speak. So the co-concert part of my life was easy to do, because if I had a client, and I also had clients that were with me for a very long time, a lot of them were personal friends of mine outside of the gym. Oh, nice. So if I had a client on a Tuesday night and there was a show I wanted to go to, I would say, hey, Frank, I got a show Tuesday night. Could you come in Monday instead? No problem, Jeff. You got it. So everything worked well while I was doing the gym thing. It was just the perfect setting for it. The only thing on the bad side was, up until the photography kind of exploded, I was doing a lot of other things. I was in softball leagues. I was in bowling leagues. I played tennis. Those were all the things I did outside of just going to work every day. Yeah. So when the photography started to really grow, a lot of those things I had to give up. I just didn't have time for everything, because the concert scene became not the night concert. Now, you know, during the season, like summer, spring, Now it's, you know, day concerts, it's all day shows. Warped Tour was always on a weekday, right? So you had to take off the day of work to go to Warped Tour, you know, all those things. So, you know, weekend concerts now started earlier in the day in the summertime. So it became where everything else had to be pushed to the side, you know. So I had to stop softball, I had to stop bowling, I had to stop a lot of those other things because when it came down to it, I didn't want to have to make the choice. Do I bowl or do I go see, you know, Less Than Jake, you know, kind of a thing.
I didn't want to see Less Than Jake.
So
I kind of have a two-part question with that. One, how was it to really manage your time because you were still doing so many things and the concert scene was exploding? So first question is, how did you really manage everything? And the second question, how, obviously you were so invested in the concert scene as the concert scene was invested in you, but how did it actually feel to give up those other passions you had?
Okay, so the first part is an excellent question because it ties into my personal life. So prior to the concert life, and as you know, when it comes to my life, I'm an open book, right? So there's nothing hidden. There's no skeletons in my closet, right? So one thing I had to make sure when I was starting to go to all these concerts and, you know, making friends with staff and bartenders and all these things is to make sure that they all knew my personal story. And that is that I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. And I've been clean and sober 31 years. So I was already clean and sober for a decade or two before I started even doing this. So I already had a built foundation on managing my life. So when the photography really started becoming what most people would consider overwhelming, my life was already geared towards organization, time management. Those were all things I learned prior to that just through getting clean and sober. So I remember coming home from work, I would go to a show, I would come home from a show, let's say midnight. Well, I had to have a system. So the system was upload my memory cards, charge my batteries. All of that had to be done before I went to bed. Had to be, because everything had to be ready for the next day. Emails had to be sent out, you know, requests had to be made, you know, a list had to be made. What shows am I doing this week? So I learned how to be very structured in how I was doing things. So manageability was a huge part of it, because there's a lot of photographers out there that would go to a show and you would see those pictures pop up a month later, right? If you remember, I always made a pact with myself that all my pictures, I don't care how many shows I went to, but my pictures were edited professionally and put up within 48 hours of that show.
Yeah, I have to say, you were really,
if
really
I shot
quick.
for venues, they had to be, at least a few pictures had to be sent right away, sometimes even that night. So I had to have a system. There was no way around. So that manageability was, thank God, already in place in my life.
In your life.
And
that's awesome.
What was the second part again?
Well, before we get to the second part, I do want to just like congratulations and also thank you for being open. I think also another reason I love you is because you are so open. So I do remember you telling me that like years ago, and it is so like heartwarming because it's like, wow, you went, like, it just shows people that they can go from maybe a dark time to then like rediscovering their self. And then you're right, like practices you already have implemented in your life then just helped you in the long run. So I just want to also give you credit and an ode to that.
As a matter of fact, when I was going to like some of the VFW shows, some of the kids that were, you know, having issues, I was kind of sponsoring. I was helping these kids, and I was showing them that, hey, you don't have to drink and drug. You don't have to think that drinking and drugging has to be part of the music scene. You know, you could go to a concert and have a great time without doing that if you choose to. You know, I never told anybody how to live their life, but I was always like, this is what I do, and I'm able to do it without that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'm here. You know, if you want to talk, I'm here.
That's
And some of
amazing.
those people reached out to me, and I would take them to meetings, and I was, helping them out along the way.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I didn't know that you did that. And that's so inspiring. And not that I had drugs or alcohol problems, but I did have like very deep depression and I went through a lot of family drama and craziness. So I could connect in the way that going to concerts was like the release, like that was my therapy. And when you meet awesome people that also connect to that, because my whole thing was I never felt like I belonged. So I felt like at a concert, or whatever kind of concert it was, venue, wherever, I felt like that was my people. Like that's my crowd. This is where I belong. This was like my kind of like Pat and Penny says, my second family.
Yeah. Well,
And
and Patent Pending would always give that message about suicide.
mm-hmm,
Remember, they always talk about, because they
yeah,
had a friend, so they would always talk about if anybody was depressed or anybody had issues, not to hold it in and to
and
just
talk to them.
talk to whoever.
And I think that's why I also really connected to Pat and Penny because I felt like there was a period in my time where I did almost kill myself. And I really, really thank myself that I was in the music scene and thank music that like I think if I didn't have music, I don't know if I'd still be here, honestly. So when I think back to this, like, Jersey music scene really helped my foundation of growing up and, like, being who I am. And then to learn that you also helped these other kids, like, oh, my heart.
And I always want to, like, even as a person, like when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I remember like I'd be outside on the street, playing football with my friends. And
Yeah.
then when we were done, all my friends would leave. But there would always be the younger kids would be watching us. And when we were done, I would stay and I would take the younger kids and I would say, come on, let's run some plays. And I'd have a catch
Aw.
with the younger kids. So I was always that way, even growing
Yeah.
up. I always felt like, like you don't have to be an asshole, right? You
Yeah.
could just be nice. Like, you could just, help out somebody, have a catch with somebody. We did that all the time. I would always have, Frisbee catches, because I remember when I was younger, most younger people always wanted to be cool and they wanted to hang out with the older kids,
Yeah.
right? Because that would
Mm-hmm.
be cool. Because if the
Mm-hmm.
older kids accepted you, what's cooler than that,
Yeah.
right? So I always felt like, if there was young kids that always was watching us play ball, why not say, hey, come on, let's have a catch, or come on, let's throw the ball around for a little while before I go home, type of a thing. So yeah, it was always like that.
That's awesome. And that just really goes to show your character. The second question was, how did it feel to give up those other hobbies that you were invested in?
Well, it was hard because I'm a passionate person, so whatever I did, I put 100% into it. So up something was not an easy thing to do. The only difference was the photography. I guess passion for photography just overwhelmed the passion for the other things. So
Okay.
as the photography kept evolving, and I couldn't do both, in my head, I didn't want to give up the photography or lessen it. So I had
Hmm.
no choice. So it kind of just came down to which passion was going
To
further.
win. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's cool. So then, so when you came more like, okay, this is like where my path's going, like it's time to just full time focus on that. How was that transition then?
again, it was very, very hard because time was everything. Like there was no downtime. Like, and just so you know, like, I have a wife, I have kids, I have Ian, I have a daughter.
Hmm.
Um,
I
and
remember when she was little, and it's so crazy. She's a tattoo artist now, and I'm
she's a
like, she's
tattoo
so
artist now, yeah.
cool.
So there are times where I missed funerals. There are times where I missed weddings. There were times where I missed sweet 16s. There was no more holiday dinners. There was no more any of that. That was all done. It was gone. I had to make the decision that it was either all or not. I couldn't, I'm not that type of person that could say I'll do it only when it's convenient. So it was either all or nothing to me. That's just the type of person I am. So
Yeah.
when people would say, my wife would say, oh, we got invited to this wedding. I can't. There's a summer stake. I can't. I have to be somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just, it became that. So, I'm not going to say that that's right or wrong or good or bad. That's just my choice to make. A lot of people might not feel that way. They might, people might be pissed, like, hey, Jeff didn't come here, or Jeff didn't go there. And I'd be like, well, it's not like I didn't come to your event because I was sitting on the couch watching a football game. I didn't come to your event because I'm dedicated to what I do. I take what I do very seriously. And whether I was getting paid or not, it was still very meaningful to me. Yeah. So that's the road that I took. So just everything else, my entire life kind of took a back burner. The good thing is both my wife and my kids supported me. They they understood. They were like, okay, I get it. That, it's your thing. Do what's right for you. Type of a thing. So it worked.
That's awesome too, to have your family support, because that could have been, like a lot of stress and drama.
100%.
So that's super awesome. And I mean, I have met your wife and your kids, and I love them all. They're super awesome people. So I don't doubt that they were not supportive. Yeah. So now, like, you're doing this, it's becoming amazing, it's overwhelming. We're post Hurricane Sandy, and you're just flowing now. You're just doing it full time.
Yeah, so it's like, it just kept snowballing. Like, so then there was a guy who was actually doing what I do for the venues, right? Mm-hmm. So on a professional level, he was shooting for Starland Ballroom as well as the Stone Pony Summer Stage. And me and him talked here and there. We always ran into each other at Starland, talked a few times, and we knew each other. I wouldn't say we were friends, but we knew each other, and we knew each other's lifestyle and stuff. Anyway, at some point, he decided to step down. Oh. He decided to kind of, the music concert photography as a career was really kind of taking a nosedive, right? Oh. It just, everything, social media, younger people shooting shows for free, everything played a part in the people that were doing it for a living could no longer earn a living doing it. Yeah. So a lot of those people had to find other ways or other means. So he just happened to, he was a staff photographer for the Asbury Park Press at the time as well. So he just decided that the concert scene was not the best way to make money anymore unless he was specifically hired by a band. Right. So I remember both venues, Stone Pony first. I remember getting a message from one of the guys that works for Live Nation, who runs Pony Summer Stage shows. He said, "Hey, are you ready?" And I said, "Ready for what?" He said, "You're up. It's your turn. You've been busting your ass for years, and so stepped down. And you're the guy. Your name came up in meetings, and you're the guy. You're now the official photographer for the Stone Pony Summer Stage."
That's so cool.
And I remember saying, like, do I get paid? And they go, yeah, like, yeah, and so, yeah, so it was kind of pretty cool. And at that point, I was already technically doing every show inside the Pony as well for a couple of years prior to that. So I was already deemed the house photographer of the Stone Pony. But the Summer Stage was a very big deal. That's a huge, thing. And then Starland Ballroom reached out to me about advertising with them. And I remember saying, yeah, I'll do that. And I spoke to them and kind of said, like, I had my name up on the big screen, in between the bands and the shows.
Yeah. So if anyone doesn't know, that shows. So, okay, if you go to a Starland Ballroom concert, there's a screen and it'll show ads in the beginning before a band goes on. It'll show it in between when bands change to different bands. And I remember one time I visited Jersey and you had your ad in there. And I was like, I think it was a Buck Cherry concert. I went home and me and my mom went. And I was like, wait, I know him.
Yeah, so I with them I had, and they told me, listen, any show that you want to cover, just let us know. We'll put in a request for you. And so that's kind of how we did it. So I was basically now shooting any show I want at Starland and shooting all the shows at the Pony. And there was some nights where I did both. There were some nights where the Summer Stage show, because that's outside, headline, it would go on like 8:30 because of the noise ordinance. So 8:30 I would do my shots, and then I would get in my car and within 40 minutes be at Starland Ballroom just in time to shoot the headliner there. So I would literally do both venues on the same night multiple times throughout the summer, So yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome. So then obviously getting the paid you're the photographer is such an incredible moment. How was it for especially Ian, who really obviously I know you have a daughter and a son, but for Ian, who you started this journey with, how did he feel like when he's like you're my dad is now he made it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Ian, I think as he got older, he realized how cool it was. When he was younger, I think it was a little harder for him, because I remember there was a time where when he was that age, like that 13, 14, 15-year-old age, where everybody used to hang out at the mall on a Friday and Saturday night, just destroying the mall. And I remember him coming home and saying, "Dad, I can't go to the mall anymore." I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Because all these kids want to do is talk about you. All they want to know is what you're doing and where you're going and what shows." And he goes like he didn't like it, at first.
It's too much.
But as he progressed and got older, he realized that, hey, he'd call me up, "Hey, Dad, are you going to this show tomorrow?" "Yeah, why? Hey, could you get me in? Could you bring me?" Kind of. So it became more about that. So as he got older, and now he's going to be 25 this month. But when he started to get, let's say, 18, 19, 20, then it became more cooler for him. Hey, Jeff's my dad,
Yeah. And then also for your younger daughter, when she kind of grew up with you already doing this. So then how was her perception now that
she loves music, but she's not a concert person.
Oh, okay.
I took her to a couple of shows. Actually, I think the very last show that she ever went to with me and my wife, which they did not enjoy, was All Time Low.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because those girls are crazy.
Yeah, it's just, it's not my daughter's scene. My daughter's more of a laid back type of a person. She loves music. My daughter she even listens to rap a lot. Actually, Ian writes his own music now. Ian does a lot of rap stuff.
That's cool. It's pretty cool too, because not only are you such a music oriented family, but like Ian's doing his own music, but then also your daughter being a tattoo artist. I feel like tattoos and concerts and music just kind of go hand in hand too.
Well, I'm actually a born artist.
Oh,
I was
really?
actually an artist as a kid. So both my kids have the creative outlet.
Oh, that's so dope. Yeah. So there you go. It's just like full circle family.
Yeah. I just never pursued it, beyond a certain point. I went from drawing and painting as a kid to doing more like model building, those kind of projects. But I always had to have something there to build with my hands. Yeah. So if you look at a lot of pictures of me when I was younger, you'll see in the background is all the projects that I build in behind the scenes. So when I look at old pictures of me and my wife when we were younger, all you'll see behind us is like wall units filled with my models, puzzles. I have puzzles hanging from the ceilings.
You're gonna have to send some photos my way, and I'll link them.
Yeah, so I always had something there to work on. There was always a kit that I had on a table that I was in the middle of building while I was going about life.
Oh, that's really cool. Awesome. So obviously we all know you as Jeff Crespi Rocks. You're the professional published music photographer. So that being said, in that high, we all know that this year has been a really tough year, especially in the music industry. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, sure. So when this all happened, so when at the very beginning, before we had the lockdown, and things were just very eerie, right? Because I don't think anybody really knew what was going on at that time. It was just something nobody's ever seen on this level worldwide. So here, everybody is just off their rocker, right? Everybody's just running around. Everybody's on social media going ballistic. Nobody knows how to handle it. Nobody knows what their life is going to be the next day. And I remember sitting there with my wife and saying, "Oh my God, like, look what's going on. Like, I don't understand, like, are people that crazy, or are they just, confused? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what the real answer was. And I remember we didn't even have Netflix in the living room.
Mm.
Like, I didn't even have a smart TV in the living room. So when this all happened, like, I had to go buy a Roku just to have Netflix in the living room so we could start watching stuff other than the norm. And I remember my daughter like showing us all these documentaries and stuff. Anyway, so at the beginning, it was very weird because everything just started closing and closing and closing. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I
Yeah.
going to handle this? I really didn't think I would be able to handle it. And I remember sitting down on the couch with my wife every morning and doing nothing else. Like, there was nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't leave the house for the first 2 months. And my wife was home. We were both on unemployment. My daughter was laid off. She was working at Panera. She got laid off. And so here we are, the three of us, just sitting on the couch all day and night watching TV. And I said, okay, I got to do something. And as a photographer, the last thing I wanted to do was walk around parks taking pictures of plants, right? That I might think, okay, what just wasn't what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about doing a project. So I came up with this concept of going out and taking pictures of musicians from a distance, describing their state of mind during this time.
Oh wow,
So I
that's
would go
incredible.
take the picture, and then they would send me a quote that I would superimpose on top of the picture.
Oh my
And I
God,
remember
that's
just putting up
super
a post
awesome.
on Facebook saying, this is the idea I have. Is anybody interested? And I woke up that morning to about 40 requests.
Oh wow.
And each day more and more people at the end of the time frame, I ended up picking like 2 or 3 days a week, and I would go out for a few hours at a time because I still didn't want to be out there running around and causing chaos. It
Yeah.
was still a very eerie time. And I had a list of all these people and their addresses. And I had to
Oh,
now sit there and figure out geographically, north, south of me, I'll do these 4 today, I'll do those 5 tomorrow. And I had to set that all up. And I went out, and by the time it was done, I ended up taking 70 pictures,
wow.
70 individual pictures. And each picture, again, they would send me a quote. I would superimpose the quote, and I would post the picture on both Facebook and Instagram. Well, it became so cool that I decided I got to do something with these pictures. So it ended up being turned into a documentary, which
Oh
is
wow.
actually on YouTube.
Oh wow.
It's called COVID-19 State of Mind.
Oh
You
my
could
God,
go watch.
I didn't know that. I have to
Yeah,
go on
yeah,
Facebook more often. I'm so out of
yeah.
touch.
So
Wow, we'll link it.
a friend of mine volunteered to video this documentary. We went down to Asbury Park and we did this video, on the boardwalk. And we took all the pictures, and all the pictures are put into the video. So you can see
Wow,
all the pictures of the people that I took prior to the documentary. So
that's
yeah,
so
it came out
amazing,
really
Jeff.
cool. So that whole project for me took somewhere about a month's worth of time. So that was kind of the start of me kind of getting back out there and doing
Mm.
something that I could, give back to the community, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um, and that was it. And then other than that, you can only do what you can do. I just kind of sat back and said, we got to let this ride out and see what happens. Um, Couple of months ago when they decided to reopen indoor dining at a very limited capacity, some of the venues and some of the restaurants that I always went to started having live entertainment again. So
oh, that's
again, I was
awesome.
very lucky that where I live is within a close proximity of these places. So the Wonder Bar, for one, they've been doing live music for the last couple of months. The
That's
Brighton Bar
awesome.
in Long Branch has been doing live shows now. Again, limited capacity, following the guidelines. Some of the restaurants were doing like outdoor stuff, in the parking lots. I was doing that. So I've been doing things. I've been doing a lot of behind the scenes pictures of live streaming events. I'm very fortunate enough. I've been invited into places like the Strand Theater that was doing some live streaming early on, and a lot of the bands brought me in there to take behind the scenes pictures. A company called We Star Productions, which I met up with, they're doing a lot of live streaming, and they brought me on as a behind the scenes photographer. So I got to do a lot of cool stuff with them. So I've been busy, but very weird and different stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure now it's weird because you have to wear like masks, so you don't have that like interactions as you once had. And I'm sure there's, other requirements, of course.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because
social distancing.
I think we're still in a place where not everybody knows what to do. Like nobody really knows what the etiquette is.
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying to stay afloat. And the other part of it is there's all the other side that's, still not understanding that this is something serious. Yeah. So it's like, I've been doing what I'm doing, but I am being cautious.
Yeah, of course.
I'm only going places that I'm familiar with. I'm only going around people I'm familiar with. And if I go to certain places, I'm like, hey, I'll go, but I'm going to sit down at the table and I'm going to take my pictures from the table. I'm not walking around. I'm not doing anything that I'm not supposed to be doing. Yeah. So for now it is what it is, and I just got to ride it out and hope for the best.
Yeah. That's awesome that you did find ways to like make with the time. Like you did your documentary, which is so incredible, and I'm sure that just gave those people involved and even the people that watch like the hope, like, okay, we'll get back to it. Like it's definitely not gonna be this year.
One of the cool things about that documentary was a lot of the bands that I work with over the years, they're at a show, right? They're playing the show. I'm shooting a show, right? So we go to a venue. They're doing their thing. I'm doing my thing. You don't always have the opportunity to talk with them on a personal level. There's bands and artists that I've shot over the years that I don't know a thing about them personally. I have no idea what they do for a living. I have no idea if they have a family. I have no understanding of that. There's only certain people that you find the time or the opportunity to do that with. So when I was doing this project, a lot of the people I was showing up to do the pictures for, it gave me that opportunity to have that 5 or 10 minute conversation about their lives. Because right now at that time, it's all about their lives, not music. It was about their personal life. So one of the guys that I did a picture for, who I shot a couple of times prior at the Pony, when I showed up to take the picture, I found out that just a few hours prior to that, his father-in-law passed away in one of those veteran homes.
Oh, wow.
Now, picture that. Here's a person I never had a personal conversation with. And now I'm 10 feet from that person talking to him about a family member dying. And found out that he had a little daughter, and so those are things I never would have known if it wasn't for this. So that was part of the project too. I have a good friend who's a musician, but he's also a dentist. Now people were on, this one, that one, poor me, poor him, poor her, all those kind of things were going on. But also, I'm sitting here now talking to my friend who's the dentist, and he's like, Jeff, I had to close my business. So just because I was a dentist, I still got to pay my bills. I still have a mortgage. I still have car payments. I had to fire my staff. I had to let my staff go and close my business for the time being. Now, thank God, eventually he was able to open back up. But just because he was a dentist didn't mean that he wasn't affected. So part of that project that I did was also the conversation about, how is this affecting your life as a dentist as opposed to somebody who might have been a server or a bartender. It still affected everybody. It didn't matter if you were a professional or you weren't. So I think that was kind of a cool piece of the puzzle as well that I got to visualize and talk about during the project.
I think that's really amazing. One, the project itself, but you're right, the meaning behind it. Like you're right. It's not just the music scene. It's really everybody. But because, you know, we're specifically talking about the music scene, we're already so connected, but like we don't really know why we're connected. We just have this kinship. But when you really learn about those people and you have those real connections and those real conversations, it just really is even more impactful. And that's so incredible you had those experiences. And that helps, you know, maybe that day was rough because we're all experiencing COVID,
Right.
but that day was probably so amazing that was like a silver lining to a terrible day, right? Like for that moment you're doing this and, you know, giving those people, getting them out of their house and getting them to be involved in the project, that is so incredible. Like,
Well, that's what a lot of them said to me. They said, this gave me this actually got me off my couch and get dressed. Like I had to actually get dressed to come outside, you know, to take the picture, you know. So yeah, it was a big thing for them as well. Yeah.
That's so crazy. That's so just like amazing, like in a crazy time, how amazing to find that light in the sense. Obviously, you know, we don't know anything that's going to happen going forward. Like obviously concerts are rescheduled to 2021, maybe 2022. Fingers crossed, because I have a lot of concert tickets that got canceled. One of them being Motley Crue's reunion.
Yeah.
But
because you haven't seen them at all, right?
I know, right? I saw. Well, it's so crazy because like when they announced that they were reuniting for a tour, I saw. So of course, me and my mom saw them so many times in New Jersey. But then I moved to California when they did their final tour, so I saw their final tour in LA. So then it was like, they're back. I have to see them reunite in LA. So then when it got canceled, I'm like, no. I mean, it's not canceled; it's rescheduled. But
yeah,
still.
but it's. I think we all, people like you and me that are so used to that scene, you know, it's the unknown. It's the not knowing what's going to happen and how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, how is this all going to play out when that time does come, where concerts do start to come back, and what is that process going to be?
Yeah. So I obviously feel like they're going to for sure implement masks. Like anyone who attends the concert has to wear masks. Maybe like implementing hand sanitizers everywhere in venues or something. And then who knows I don't know how. I mean, in bigger venues, you can I guess they're gonna have to do less capacity to social distance people. But shit, whatever gets me to that concert.
I mean, Live Nation already put out an article saying that they were already in the works to figuring that out on their end, and they were talking about how if you wanted to go to a concert, that you are not going to be allowed in the venue unless you were able to produce a negative COVID test result or a vaccine.
Yeah, so I feel like right now in comedy, they're doing like people like Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle, they can afford to rapid test people, and then you just wait in line and you get tested by that venue.
You can't do that with 5,000 people online.
Yeah, so I just wonder how. I'm sure if they can do rapid testing, they'll probably start maybe low capacity and maybe do that. But I guess we don't know. But
it'll never work anyway, because you've got to remember at that point you already bought your ticket, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Who's going to go out now and spend all that money? A lot of people would buy their whole season worth of concerts up front, right? For the season. So who's going to do that now when they don't know at any given moment if they're going to even be allowed in the door?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're going to have to figure out a better, something better than that.
Yeah. But fingers crossed, we're gonna figure it out, guys. We're gonna figure it out. If anyone will figure it out, because you're right. It's a good point. Like the music industry is not like when you say music industry, you think everyone involved in that: musicians, photographers, servers, bartenders, everyone, stagehands, stage crews, security guards, 100%. But also, you think the dentist or just little old me were fans of the music, and that could that's what keeps me alive, like going to concerts, listening to the music, so in a sense it affects everybody in a sense of their mental health too.
Yeah, I think music in general is a huge thing, so I don't think it'll ever be where
we'll figure it out somehow.
Thrown by the wayside, right?
Yeah.
So I think no matter how it happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to figure it out, whether it be now, next year, or the year after. At some point, this is all going to end, and everybody's life is going to go back to whatever it is, right? Yeah. So it's just a matter of when.
when, yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the hard part right now.
Yeah.
You know?
So in a perfect world where COVID is taken care of and we get past it and we're good, obviously you worked so hard for so long to get to be a published professional music photographer. Is there any advice for, like, obviously it takes hard work, and you, like you said earlier, you know, when you want something, you put 100% into it, you're consistent. What would you tell people that are watching this that might feel like, oh, that sounds like super inspiring, I want to get into that?
Well, so I guess the first part I would say is, you know, if you're going to do it for the passion, right? Don't set out because, you know, I'm not discouraging anybody, but, you know, financially, concert photography is not really financially stable. Most of the photographers that do make money don't do it doing concerts. They do it mostly doing other things like weddings, engagement shoots that, you know, do photography full time. There's very few photographers that make a living shooting music, unless you're still a studio photographer or, you know, somebody that's already have an established reputation or relationship with higher end commercial stuff, right? But somebody who's just shooting local shows, or somebody who's shooting, you know, even mainstream bands, but in their local town, they're not making money because nobody's paying photographers anymore. You know, I make more money off the local scene from friends of mine over the year than I do from the venues, because the bands aren't paying me, the mainstream bands aren't paying me, because they all have their own photographers. They have their touring photographers that are just living the tour life, which I can't do, you know. So, you know, I have a lot of people that reach out to me all the time. I have parents that email me and tell me their kids, you know, want to be a photographer, and could you like mentor them, or could you, you know, help them get photo passes? And I have to explain that that's not how it works. You know, I built what I built from the ground up, and I've been very lucky to do what I did and hustle the way I did and built a brand for myself. So if the only advice I could give somebody is to go wherever you're allowed to go in terms of locally, take pictures at every show you're at, and build a portfolio. There's no other way to do it. You know, if you think that you're just going to call somebody up now and say, give me a job as a photographer, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. I mean, of course, like anything worthwhile, you need to put in the work.
Right.
So.
100%.
So, yeah. So now this is going to be kind of like a rapid fire of like first things that come to your head. So if you could name your 3 favorite shows attending, and then your 3 favorite shows shooting, could you do that?
Okay, let's see. So let's do shooting first.
Okay. I guess favorites, most memorable 3 shows.
I would have to say shooting wise, probably my favorites would be Marilyn Manson, Kiss, and probably Gua.
Okay, those are crazy shows.
Yeah,
so
because those are all visuals, and to me, that's what photography is about. It's all about the visual. It's all about, if there's something to see, it's something cool.
Yeah.
You know, attending. I would say Linkin Park.
Rest in peace, Chester.
Jane's Addiction.
Oh, nice.
And probably Kiss as well.
Kiss as well. Yeah, you can't ever go wrong. And then do you have, like, it could have been at any time, is there any like super memorable concert or experience, good or bad, in your journey that's like you always remember that concert from?
There's a lot of those, but I probably have to say the first one, I wasn't even shooting yet. Like, I was actually working security for Strike Force years ago at one of the Bamboozles, and I was at the main stage in the security
before you
pit.
Say that, I want to say I might be thinking the same memory, because I remember, and I have a photo of you in the Strike Force uniform working Bamboozle main stage, and it was when 30 Seconds to Mars was playing, and that was a concert I got choked in, and you helped me. Someone was choking me, and I remember you helped me off. So I was like, wait, are you about to say that memory?
I do remember that. the memory I was going to say was a day to remember.
Oh, okay.
Was, which I have seen before, but I never seen them where he went in the bubble.
Oh, that was incredible.
And I remember standing in the pit facing the crowd.
At Starland Ballroom too.
Yes, but that was after. So
yeah,
that was, I shot that show. But when I was only doing security, I remember standing in the photo in the pit with security, and he was on the stage in the bubble, and he was about to roll into the crowd, but to get to the crowd, he has to go over our head. And I remember the head of security yelling at me, "Jeff, look up." And I'm like, why? Like, and I look up and there's this giant bubble coming over my head that I had to put my hands up to push him towards the crowd. And I never seen anything like that in my life. And I remember just watching him along the crowd in the bubble. That was the first time I ever saw that.
That was, I remember that. I remember that at Bamboozle, I want to say. And then he brought it to Starland. And I remember when he came out in that hamster ball, the crowd was just trying to touch him. It was so incredible.
So that was probably pretty cool. That was something I never saw before, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We also first touched. You did do security for a little bit too.
Yeah, well, I was doing it just as like a side gig, but it kind of, I guess, it was like, what do I do? I can't take pictures. Yeah. Like, it kind of like, again, it was one of those things where the passion for taking pictures overwhelmed me from doing that. Like, I remember I was doing security for Bono, for U2 at the Meadowlands, and I was literally right underneath him, right? And I'm like, I can't take pictures. I'm working. And I remember I would give my camera to the person in the crowd, and I'd say, could you take a few pictures for me so I have some pictures? And then I remember when they were done, I had to follow him around to the gate, and I was standing there, and guess who was standing right there next to me, waiting for him to come off the stage? Bruce.
No way. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, him and Bruce kind of walked off together into the green room.
Oh my God, Bruce! Oh, that's super cool. Nice. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to like hit you with some like of those questions as like a fun little antic to it. So I so appreciate your time. I know like it's so much better in person, but thank you for getting on Zoom. It's been so long. I mean, we of course keep in touch on social medias and stuff, but it's just cool to have a conversation again. Is there any like last parting words or anything else you would like to say, reach out to anybody, or also anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I mean, like, again, it's, I mean, in terms of plugs, see, one thing that I love about what I do is I never made it about, there's no ego, right? There's no, everything I do is based off passion and feel. So everything I've accomplished is just based on sheer hustle, based on work ethic. It's all about that for me, and it will always be all about that for me. One thing I want to stress, not compare myself to other photographers, but to me there's a very big difference to people that support the scene as opposed to people that just chase popularity. And one thing I never did was chase popularity. And I was always known for the person that treats the opening act that has 4 people there, watching them the same way as I treat the headliner. And I think that's a big part of what I do and where I come from and my reason behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. So for me, it's all about, I don't care if you're a 16-year-old kid, you might be that next Bruce. You might be that next, Willie Nile. You might be that next Jesse Malin. So a lot of those people don't realize that they didn't start off that way. They started off down here. And you can't get here without being there first. And that's why I love what I do, because I love to support those younger, newer bands that nobody ever saw, nobody ever heard of. Warped Tour was a perfect example. When those gates opened, where do you think I went?
To the smaller stages first.
Absolutely, right to that side stage. I got to be one of the first photographers to take pictures of Echo Smith, when they were just little kids.
Yes,
The
good
band
point.
Kaleido that I follow, that I love, I met them at Warped Tour. They're from Detroit.
Yeah.
They got to play Warped Tour for the first time in their lives, and they gave them the Jersey date. They went on at like 12:30 in the afternoon. And those were the stages I would stay at for hours. I wouldn't go to the main stages until the end, until
Later.
those last 3 or 4 bands.
I do have to attest that that is literally genuinely who you are, because yeah, you would always be, and I always knew like, okay, I'm gonna see Jeff over here during the day and then catch him there, and then later, the big bands start. But you're right, and you're right. Echo Smith is now really big. You did take their photos first.
Yeah. I remember actually, I think it was, probably was maybe the one. I don't remember, it was Warped Tour or Bamboozle. Black Veil Brides was one of the last bands to play. It was already a little dark out, and I already did my shooting, and I'm standing or like the perimeter of the crowd, and there's a guy standing next to me, and he's holding like all these bags, right? And I look at him, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Yeah, my goddamn daughter's in the crowd. I got stuck holding all the bags," and I realized it was Jim Brewer.
Oh,
The
wow.
comedian.
How
So
funny.
now me and Jim are like having a conversation, standing there. So many cool interactions like that.
Yeah.
So you get to meet so many cool people, being at shows, and especially, from smaller shows to bigger shows. You never know who you're going to see, who you're going to be around,
That's a really good point, because like you go to the concerts to see the bands but then you discover new bands.
Yeah.
You discover bands you would never think you would listen to. Then you meet all sorts of people, and the connection is just ongoing. And you're right, it just really feeds into the nature of like good human beings. Like
100%.
oh wow, like this is cool. Who would have known if I ever didn't come to this concert? Would I ever discover this band? Would I ever discover my best friend now? Or that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know that you said that you came up with a documentary. Do you want to say again what it's called on YouTube so people can search it?
Well, if you go on YouTube, or you could go on my website, jeffcrespirocks.com, and under my press tab is all my documentaries. So I have
awesome.
3 or 4 documentaries that I've done. I have a movie that I did. And some of the podcasts that I've been on.
Oh, cool.
So even when like yours is done and ready, I'll link that to my press tab. But you could also see them all on YouTube as well. So if you just go to YouTube and type in Jeff Crespi, you'll see a lot of all the documentaries.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. Oh, I'll be added to the Jeff Crespi website. Obviously you can find yourself at Jeff Crespi Rocks on Instagram, and then your Facebook is just the same, I'm assuming.
Yep, it's the same name everywhere.
Awesome. And then I guess we should have asked in the beginning, what made you choose Jeff Crespi Rocks? I mean, I assume it's because it's like rock shows, or because you legit rock.
I guess it was just basic and simple. Yeah. Like, to me, it was just made sense. Like, I know that a lot of people have their own publications or websites or blog sites, and they, come up with this cool concept or cool name. I don't know. For me, it was always about, it's me. It's like, I'm a one-man show. Like, nobody works for me. I don't use people to go shoot shows for me. And people used to always ask that. And I'd be like, well, that defeats the purpose. Like, this is what I love to do. So why would I want somebody else to go shoot a show on my behalf? That's not the point. I'd rather run around and be at 5 shows in one night than have other people going to those shows for me. It's not a selfish thing. It's a work ethic thing. It's my accomplishment. It's what I love to do. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. I agree too. And I always thought you were the coolest dude, but even now you're more cooler than you could have been. I thank you for all the photos you took of me, being so kind, and your family being so kind to me. So also tell your family I said hello. Awesome. Well, oh my gosh, I feel like I could talk for hours, but I know I took some of your time. So thank you so much for being on. My pleasure. So incredible. Bye, guys. Have a good day.